Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Lehr with my host, Imperial Dane. The topic of the day, the MG42, the basics of using the schweres MG42. And all the fun bits about that. And of course, we're sort of noticing here, it's a four-man team. Three sort of support gunners with machine and pistol, ready to cover against any enemies that might get too close. And of course, we got the MG42 itself, able to lay down a large amount of fire. It's also got quite an arc, though of course also noting rather quickly that, it can't see everything. And of course that's also, really quickly brings up one of the points you want you to do with it. Again, you want it to support something. You want it not to be alone, because again, that four-man squad also means it can very quickly get cleared out. I mean, support weapon crews in general take 25% more damage than other units, which basically means that the MG42 in particular is rather vulnerable to getting flanked and can easily get cleared out, in particular if someone with submachine guns appears and begin, doing nasty things. So in that regard, when utilising the MG42, usually you want someone to be able to sort of see things for you. Usually another infantry squad at the very least, sort of should get the most out of the range, but also generally there to be covered and help assist in case someone decides to flank. So that is something you generally want to keep in mind here with the MG42. And generally you don't want to be sending it in alone without being able to see where you're going. Again, have something lead the way, then the MG42 can sort of support whatever's leading the way in case something goes pear-shaped.
Our opponents are seizing a sector.
Always sort of try and maintain a respectful distance wherever your opponent and whatever your opponent might throw at you. And right there, of course, we see sort of one is immediate advantage. It can very quickly suppress opponent troops. Well, enemy troops, I suppose, would be a better wording. But again, it can't see very far. It simply can't see, all the way of its arc of fire. So again, you want something usually sort of spot forward, and there you go. I mean, you see a squad flanking up there, and that's likely going to force my MG42 to be in some trouble. There we go. I'm in fact reacting perhaps a bit too late, but in this case, we're actually seeing me falling back here. Falling back. Setting up. In this case, for some reason, it does not try to flank, but usually, and also note they can actually do a bit of light damage to the scout car as well, in particular towards the rear. But also, as a general rule of thumb, and I'll just pause to sort of point this out, if your MG42 does get flanked, you're generally better off pulling it back completely, since your opponent will likely try to hound it down. So unless you've got a lot of support somehow, if it's on its own, just pull it back. There's absolutely no attempt in sense in trying to sort of set it up slightly further back, because your opponent will just easily pursue you and hunt it down. So generally, if it's alone and it gets outflanked, pull it back immediately. And I do mean immediately, unless you've got something that can support, because otherwise it's going to get wiped out. And I've certainly seen a lot of players sort of ending up losing their MG42s like that. So again, just pull them back if they're in danger and there's nothing there to actually help them. Because again, they simply can't move up and set up fast enough to actually be able to sort of outmaneuver an opponent, unless your opponent is a complete twerp. And generally, you should never assume your opponent is a complete twerp, because then you might get surprised and find out he's not. So that's something vital to keep in mind in general, for those curious. Also, a little fun fact about units suppressed: they do a lot less damage. They overall become a lot less combat effective. So that's another benefit here of actually using the MG42 in general. And of course, it's also nice that each of some then have a more to support it, firing down on suppressed troops since they're less likely to move around. And of course, in this kind of situation right here, we of course realize, okay, this is bad. We immediately retreat to sort of avoid getting wiped out. So of course, right here we've got some problems. Sadly, again, this is what was cut down there, but still, sort of making out of their lives, sort of. Got cut down. But overall, these are sort of the mere basics of it. I'll just sort of move ahead a bit further, sort of show some of the other parts of the MG42, because there's a lot more bloody to it. So, let's get there. And here we go on to the next part of this little lesson, incendiary armor-piercing rounds. A powerful little ability here of the MG42, rather neglected, but again, it basically means your MG42 penetrates things better, which also means essentially shock troopers, for example, all of a sudden will find, my armor, it is somehow not working against this. And of course die quicker, but it also does more damage overall, making more mean, but also works nicely against, say, something like a light scout car. Also works nicely against units and buildings. As you might be noticing right here, the MG42 is actually making surprisingly short work of it. And also against the scout car, doing a reasonable amount of damage. Also something they can, of course, they do a lot more damage all of a sudden. They're also more likely to actually gain veterancy faster. And now again, troops getting caught out in the open. All of a sudden, it's actually very quickly veterancy too. And there we go. Scout car down. Troops here dying. Of course, it doesn't last long, but again, at 15 munitions, that's hardly a problem. And generally, good usage of incendiary armor piercing rounds is one surefire method of actually getting your MG42 to veterancy 3 and such. But also note here, it actually turns a bit slowly, so that's something you also keep in mind when utilizing it. Also, as it gains veterancy, for example, initially it actually gets better at suppressing units, for example. At veterancy 3, it becomes more lethal on the other hand. And it's really there you want it. But again, good uses of incendiary armor piercing rounds really allows your MG42 to become a real beast, a real killer. And you can actually do your part in actually shredding up an opponent. I mean, taking up position in a building, incendiary armor piercing rounds. Hitting the dirt right in front of you, incendiary armor piercing rounds. Scout cars, incendiary armor piercing rounds. Even light tanks like the T-70, I mean, if on the right circumstance, can actually be forced to pull a bit away due to the incendiary armor piercing rounds.
This is a nice spot of land.
Again, powerful ability, but sorely neglected. And it's also reasonably cheap, only 50 munitions. It is a veteran's 1 ability, of course. It can be a bit cheeky, but again, good usage of it can really, you know, gain so much more out of your MG42 and also quicker get it to some good veterancy, like veterancy 3, where again, it really becomes a killer. In particular, in conjunction with further incendiary armor piercing rounds. So, try to keep that in mind, but again, overall, you know, have it supporting other units. Don't place it out on its own. It's a support weapon, use it to support someone else. Doing that will really gain you some really good action over the MG42. It can also be used to stop blobs, though rarely you'll see a solo blob, but even then, it will beat the crap out of them if they do.
We are ready for action.
So hopefully people will be a bit clearer now on the MG42 and what it's actually capable of. I mean, it's a handy little weapon, but again, it's vulnerable in many regards. It can easily and quickly get cleared out if you're not careful. But again, well utilized, it can do a lot of damage. It can put a stop to scout cars, infantry, and infantry dug into buildings. Because again, it simply doesn't care about if they're in a building or not. It will tear through them like a hot knife through butter, or a very hot knife through Soviets. So hopefully I will be seeing more people be using the incendiary armor piercing rounds in the future, because again, it's the sort of thing that can easily tip things in your favor. Of course, also future tricks, you know, generally you don't want to be popping it too early, because then they'll be at the edge, and of course they'll also be farther away, take less damage. Usually you want to sort of time it, because it does take a few seconds, and also that's the thing to note. They actually have to sort of do a animation where they shift ammunition. That's a few seconds, so if you time it correctly, you can sort of try and get them and say within range of sort of medium, and then they'll be much closer to this incendiary armor piercing rounds. They'll take a lot more damage right away, and also they can actually take some losses while retreating, whereas again, if you say they can engage at the farthest away, they might, you know, find themselves easier able to escape the wrath of the schweres MG42. But overall, again, good use of MG42 can absolutely turn a battle, and again, good use of incendiary armor piercing rounds can absolutely punish your opponent for the temerity of attacking the Reich. So, hopefully people have been inspired. People have now a clearer understanding of the MG42 and how to use it on the field of battle in support of German victory. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers. Hope you'll subscribe and share with your friends, and of course comment, because you know comments are grand. And see you tomorrow.